everyone, Jaymes Mansfield here bringing you yet another video. Oh my god, you guys, it's yet another episode of Iconic Blondes. Yes. Oh my god, now, okay, trigger warning you guys. This week's Iconic Blondes is kind of a sad one. I'm sorry to say, like, for this iconic blonde, there's not that many happy moments in her life. So we're gonna try our best to remain positive and upbeat and tell the story, you know, and really focus on just like the career of her and how influential she was. Now, with that out of the way, this week's iconic blonde is none other than the siren of the silver screen, Veronica Lake. Yes. Now, Veronica Lake was born Constance Keene. Yes, Constance Keene is her actual name. And, oh, also, furthermore, this hairstyle is very involved, so I did a few things beforehand. I'll walk you through the curl pattern because it's very, very intricate in order to achieve that Veronica Lake look. So, what I did is I undercurled 2 rollers on the side on a part. It's a side part, like she had a very heavy part. And it's gonna be really hard to achieve on a synthetic wig, like a human hair wig or even your own hair is gonna be ideal for this kind of hairstyle. So, it's a severe side part like that. And I have 3 rollers undercurled here going down. Now, the curler here at the very top is angled just the slightest bit above the face because it's supposed to fall above the eye because that's how her hair was. She had a peekaboo bang. And this is the way you achieve that. And it's very, very important that this area right here has the support when you curl it, like when you steam it, because otherwise the steamer is gonna make the hair fall every which direction. And it's gonna be really, really hard to get it exactly where you want it. So I have a bunch of little pins here, basically as support rods to keep it up. All right, now with all that nerdy hair talk out of the way, let's get started. Veronica Lake was born Constance Keene, and she moved around a lot. Her father died in a factory explosion at a very young age, so her mother ended up remarrying, and her stepfather relocated them to Florida. Now, she wouldn't really know what to do with herself until, in Florida, her mother entered her in beauty pageants. And she entered the Miss Florida pageant, and she was very, very confident because she was a gorgeous girl. Like, she didn't have a whole lot of talent to present. Her talent she presented was basically she would strip away from a gown into a bathing suit. You know, it was burlesque, pretty much. And it was very scandalous. And she told all the contestants in the Miss Florida pageant that she was going to win. Like, she was so confident, but she ended up placing second. But this did not deter her. Her mother saw talent here and thought, you know what? She needs to be a Hollywood star. That's what she needs to be. So her mother and whole family moved Veronica Lake to Hollywood. And for here, she would go to a Hollywood studio and enter in their acting program. Now, she ended up getting bit parts here and there, but nothing really substantial until much later on in her life. Now, I have to go into detail. Veronica Lake's personal life is kind of sad. Now, Veronica Lake was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia at a very, very young age. And her mother thought, as a way of, you know, combating this as an outlet, they entered her into acting classes as a way for treatment because it was the 1930s. They didn't really know, they didn't have a whole grasp on mental illness at this point, okay? They were trying to figure it out. And when you come from a very poor family, you couldn't just afford, like, you know, hospital it away like a lot of rich families did. Like, this is their idea of how to cope with this. They didn't really know how to get her the treatment she needed. So they entered her into acting classes, and for the most part, it did help her somewhat, but she would always struggle with this for all of her life. Now, come the early 1940s, Veronica Lake soon found herself into a type. Now, first things first, we are going to get into the dynamic explosion that was Veronica Lake in the 1940s. But before I do, I'm going to roll the rest of this wig off camera and I'll be welcome back. All right, now I curled the hair and I also teased it in the back a little bit just because it takes up a lot of time. And yeah, let's get started. Let's keep going. Now, this is how the hair looks when it comes down from rollers. And I left the front section in rollers so I could do that on camera for you folks. Now, come the 1940s, Veronica Lake would hit her peak as far as her career goes. Now, she was still Connie Keene at this point. She had done a few movies in Hollywood where they're just kind of so-so roles, like nothing really that great, but she was interesting looking enough to where she was spotted and put in a film where she would star as a lounge singer in the movie I Wanted Wings. And this movie would create the hairstyle that she was known for. Now, this hairstyle happened by mistake. Now, Veronica Lake had a natural break in her hair. Like when she sweated up and her hair heated up, it would fall in front of her eye. It was just something that happened with her hair after being set. So while doing take after take after take, her hair fell in front of her eye and created this peekaboo bang effect. And the director went nuts over it. Like everyone went gaga over this. And suddenly the Veronica Lake look was made. And they knew they had a star in their hands. Like this glamorous girl could not go ignored. Without even her input, they changed her name from Connie Keene to Veronica Lake. And a star was born. Now, Veronica Lake had a very, very, very controlling stage mother. She wanted her daughter to be a successful actress by any means, and Veronica Lake essentially spent a lot of her time in Hollywood basically just trying to please others. Like, she never really had a whole lot of input in her career and was kind of typecast into a certain kind of role very early on. She was the film noir girl. She would soon hit her stride with movies like Sullivan's Travels, probably her most successful and most beloved movie. She had a small, foray into comedy with I Married a Witch, which is heavily the inspiration to Bewitched. Like, I Married a Witch is full on just like the same story as Bewitched. Like, they completely mopped it and made this series with it. And Veronica Lake is so cute in it. This is one of the few movies of hers that I actually have seen and I do own. I love that movie. And like watching it back, like she's not the greatest actress, but she is super charming and she's really, really likable. And that's the thing, like, it's a very big departure. Like when you watch like the Blue Dahlia or Sullivan's Travels, when she's playing like the bad girl role, or like the femme fatale. Like it's nice to see her take a break and do comedy. As I mentioned before, she suffered a lot with mental illness, and as a means of coping, she took to drinking very heavily. She started to garner a reputation of being very, very difficult and very, very unprofessional when it came to working. She was known to snap at the crew, show up late or hungover, which, mind you, I feel like she got a brunt of the discourse from this because she was a woman. When like actors like Humphrey Bogart and others were notorious for showing up hungover or not even going on set until they had a few drinks. But being a woman in Hollywood, like, it was a big no-no, like frowned upon. The press was merciless to her. And mind you, like, this is all a means of her coping with a career she didn't really want. Like, she hated being in Hollywood, she hated the star system, she hated having to partake in like this Hollywood culture where you had to go to parties, you had to be prim and proper, you had to do roles that you were told to do. Come the 1950s, her career was starting to wind down. Not to mention this hairstyle of hers became so popular. Mind you, she wasn't enjoying herself, but the public was enjoying her. Like, she was such a moment culturally in the 1940s. So much so, like, her hairstyle was so influential that like women at that time were adapting it into their everyday lives. And the US government even got involved because women were wearing their hair like this, the peekaboo bang in factories. And there was a big fear that like there's gonna be factory-related injuries involving hair, like the bang getting caught in machinery and stuff. So Veronica Lake even went on like a press tour doing PR films for the government where she encouraged women to like wear a snood and not wear their hair in front of their face. And she gladly took to this change herself by adapting new hairstyles. And sadly, it was the biggest career detriment she could have done. Because like people loved her image and the way she looked. She didn't seem to care as much. Like she thought, it's gonna pigeonhole me into an image anyway. I don't mind changing it, it's fine. Not to mention at this time, her reputation was really, really bad. It preceded her. So much so like people did not want to do films with her. They didn't want to work with her or have to deal with, having to be on set with her. She wasn't known for being the nicest, and she wasn't known for being the most professional or even showing up ready to work or in a state that she could work. She was essentially drummed out of Hollywood. She did a few films, and when they brought back Bad Returns, she was out. By the 1950s, she was no more. And this couldn't have happened at a worse time. She had married a director who essentially just didn't work. He just went on trips and spent all of their money. And he had this idea that as long as their money got lower, he should spend more and more. So he would go on expensive trips without her and leave her alone to tend to the house and her career. Mind you, no work was coming in for her. Like, she had no roles appearing on the forefront. So she would eventually leave him. And when her mother at this time was older and needed hospice care, she couldn't afford it anymore. And her mother actually took her to court to sue her for unpaid hospice care because everything was just unfolding on her all at once. And by the 1950s, she had fled to New York and left Hollywood behind entirely. Like, she had had enough. At this point, you would think her career was over with. But at this point, she was kind of trying to take control of her life, at least in a way where she could enjoy it. Like, she still was very, very much addicted to alcohol, but she was finding ways and means of coping to where it just wasn't where she had to be in Hollywood anymore. She didn't have to exist there anymore. she was happy just to leave Veronica Lake, that Hollywood starlet, behind. She started appearing in plays and small dinner theater, and she actually got a job as a bartender in New York, where she would exist and just live her life very, very quiet and very, very much out of the public eye for years in the 60s, until a reporter spotted her and did a story on her which exposed her life now. Looking back at this, it was kind of gross. Like, the way the story was spun about was, look at Veronica Lake, she's on Skid Row. Like, this is what happens to the great actresses in the 1940s. Like, look at where they end up. And so much so, like, when they interviewed her, they asked her, why would you take a job like this? And all she had to say was like, look, I like people and I like the job and I like hearing their stories. Like, it was relaxing for me to do this. Like, she didn't want to go back to Hollywood. She hated it. Like, the way they spun the story was like, she's on Skid Row, rather than saying, you know, she's just trying to survive as an actor in between work. Like, that's honestly all it really was. Like, she was still acting, just not to the degree of a Hollywood star anymore. But this would actually garner a lot of sympathy from the public, who would go on to send her money and like try and mail her like help and support through the mail, to which she would send back. Because it was a matter of pride. She didn't want pity and she didn't want to be felt sorry for. All right, as you can see, I am taking the hair down and I'm just gonna focus a lot on this section here because the bang has to fall in front of the face and do this kind of effect. You see, it's kind of already doing that. It's just a lot of nurturing. Come the late 1960s, Veronica Lake was invited back to Hollywood because they were going to be doing a star on the Walk of Fame for her. She recently released an autobiography, and this was going to be a part of her press tour to really show, you know, Veronica Lake is still out here. She's a survivor. She's still working. Well, come the day of her Walk of Fame ceremony, they put her star in this concrete and only 2 people showed up. And it was heavily documented and everyone was talking about it. And like, at this point, she's like, you know what, screw Hollywood. This is just the proof that I need that, like, I've been forgotten. No one cares. So she left Hollywood again and never returned. And come the 70s, she had one last film to her credit, which was Flesh Feast, where she played a scientist who finds out that Adolf Hitler is still alive and decides to release flesh-eating maggots onto him. It is a horror schlock movie. Like, she did a couple of these before her death. And she had one last appearance on the Dick Cavett show, which didn't show her in the best form. And Dick Cavett later on admitted later after her death that she was drunk when she appeared on it. And he thought she did it as a means to, like, you know, cope with being on television and having to talk so intimately about herself. Now, she would grow very, very ill and would need hospital care. And she was there under an alias, like no one knew who she was, and she let very few people know who she was until someone recognized her and ran the story amongst all the hospital workers who took pity on her and wanted to like have autographs with her. And like for a subtle moment, they said they could see the like sparkle in her eye again as she would start autographing pictures. Like, it made her very happy, and she was being very optimistic about the fact that like she wanted to return and she wanted to like really take her career seriously this time. Meanwhile, the doctors knew that like she didn't have long. Like, her health had deteriorated so much to the point where like these were her last days. She would quietly pass away, and her son would later try and like find means to get over there to see his mother. They were estranged for a while. He managed to get there and get her remains and claim her remains. And when it came time to pick up her remains from the funeral parlor that had cremated her, they couldn't pay the bill. So her body sat there for 3 years unclaimed. And it wasn't until one of her fans, her ghostwriter actually, from her autobiography, he paid the fee to the funeral parlor. And the story goes that he and a couple of friends taken her remains to Florida and scattered them amongst the coast as per her wishes. But sadly, this would not be the end of her. Later on, her remains were claimed to be found in essentially a novelty shop in the Catskills. Like, someone claimed to have her ashes. So like even in death, like she never really got to rest. And that is the story of Veronica Lake, sadly. Like, to put a positive spin on this, she did not have the longevity of a career that most actresses like a Bette Davis or Audrey Hepburn or someone like that would have had. But she was influential, and she did have her moments. Not to mention, like, the way how stylish she was influenced so many people. She was actually a huge inspiration for the cartoon character Jessica Rabbit. Her hairstyle was used famously in that, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Aaliyah really loved her and actually used Veronica Lake as her alias when she would go to hotels. That was her alias name she would sign under. to make sure she wasn't recognized. She was also a huge inspiration to Kim Basinger in LA Confidential. Her look and her image still exists and still thrives in the Hollywood, lexicon. Her work still stands for itself. Like, she has such a gorgeous body of work to look back on. Like, Sullivan's Travels is amazing. When you watch it, like, she is really charming and fun in it. She had like a wit and a natural like charisma that would come through in her roles. And that's what people remember Veronica Lake for. And one of the blessings of death and Hollywood and all these things is like, after a while, you don't remember the bad times. You only remember the good. And with Veronica Lake, I feel like that's a lot of what her legacy is at this point. People really try and paint her as this sad, tragic figure, which yes, her life was sad, but like the moments to remember are what she gave you artistically. Like, she gave so much of herself on screen, and she was such a people pleaser that she always put herself second. And much to her detriment, she had a career in Hollywood for other people other than herself. Now, I have to say, doing research for this was really rough, you guys. Like, I love Veronica Lake and I love her work, but like, her story is really sad. And it also, like, watching people's videos on this, you can tell like the difference between like when a female talks about Veronica Lake and when men talk about her. Like, all the videos I watched that were male made were so dismissive and so rude and just so nasty about her. Like, there was a real lack of sympathy when it came to talking about her. Like, y'all, this was a person, okay? All right, now, what I'm going to do is just smooth this hairstyle out. She is essentially there. It just needs to get smoothed. I added a permatease to it. Now, you wouldn't have to do this if you're doing this for yourself. Like, I just do it for me because this kind of flat hair on me is gonna look very, very startling. So I'm just going to smooth this out and we'll be back with the final results. Welcome back. This is the final results. I have to say, like, I love this hairstyle, okay? But the one downside about Veronica Lake hairstyles, especially with drag, is like, if you're wearing long lashes, baby, one side is gonna get pressed up the entire time with this peekaboo bang. Like, it's gonna happen no matter what. Like, my eyelash is just like that. Like, I can blink one eye and the other eye stays out. But I just like, I love this hairstyle. Like, I was obsessed with Veronica Lake for a period in high school, okay? Like, I had a Veronica Lake phase. I used to draw illustrations with this hair all the time, okay? I think it had to do with like a fascination with Jessica Rabbit, Like, I loved the way she was drawn. And, of course, gay boys, we just love Jessica Rabbit, okay? Like, you start seeing that image of like this gorgeous girl with this like really seductive, sultry hairstyle that goes over the eye. It's very mysterious and fun. Like, I live, okay? I love this hairstyle. But again, it's kind of anti-drag when it comes to wearing it. I have to make sure I style it like a good few inches away from the eye so it never actually makes contact. But I would like to take a moment, a Venmo where I think everyone has tipped me on. Venmo, I would like to thank Patrick, Sergio, Janice, thank you Janice. And I also have some YouTube super thanks from Kid Kite. Thank you so much, honey. It says you've been listening to my song nonstop and I appreciate it. Be sure and stream ESTOY PERDIDA. Yes. I have it all listed down below, okay? I'm a singer now. International singer. As well as another super thanks from ABV. Thank you, ABV. And those were my Ven moments and YouTube super thanks. Thank you all so, 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 so much. All right, now this was a great video to do. I'm glad we have Veronica Lake down in the books because she is so iconic and such an influential figure when it came to style and especially hair fashion, okay? Like, she changed the way women did their hair in the 40s, okay? And totally like a great story of a girl that set off a shock wave when it came to style and fashion and influencing the way women carried themselves and wanted to look. Now, if there's any iconic blondes or brunettes, please let me know down below. I'm always taking them into consideration. I saw you asking for Veronica Lake for quite a while now, and I'm glad we finally got to get her in the iconic series. Now, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, bye! Now hit the outro! Click here and watch my vlog about All Stars 8 Press Week. Or watch me take a drag race quiz while I do my makeup. Come on, click it. You know you want to. If you don't click it, I'll make sure your hair gets caught in machinery. So click it.